good morning, team. It is Tuesday, July 16th. I'm Amy Corr. I'm here with Kevin Van Eck in the Goose Island office on the second floor. We have a really great conversation today. Could this be the beginning of the shift in the market? So we want to talk a little bit about whether it is or whether it isn't, and what you can do to be ready and take advantage. So grab your cup of coffee, your iced coffee, lemon water, whatever it may be. Let's jump into the next episode of Coffee with Amy and Kevin. Do you even have anything in there?
Good morning, I do.
Okay.
I have a little bit left.
I just thought that I saw you kind of eyeballing
I know,
it out
I
of
was
the corner of my eye.
gauging whether it was enough for the rest of the show.
Whew, okay, hopefully.
Well, cheers. Let's get it
Cheers.
started.
All right, let's do this.
Could this be the shift? I don't know, right? But we're seeing certain metrics that we'll talk through and some data points that and stories that we've heard from agents, right, about what they're doing. So the goal today is to walk away knowing exactly what to do to be able to advise your clients on what is happening in the market based on the data and what you're feeling before it becomes data.
Yeah, and I always say as agents, we always feel the changes before the data shows it, right?
That's right.
It's always a 2-3 month lag time, and then it's like, oh, that's why I was feeling that way, or oh, that's why those certain things were happening.
Right.
And we're already starting to have these conversations. I'm hearing them across our different markets, more inventory coming on, certain things slowing down. So, and again, every market has its own unique essence to it, your own little micro market, but we still will see that shifts happen and eventually they will impact where you're at.
That's right.
We've had things like, stats in the market. I know you've been reading stuff, I've been following a lot, and they're saying, home buyers are facing the most difficult affordability conditions in nearly 40 years. So what does that mean moving forward? Home price appreciation, though, this is really interesting. Home price appreciation was on fire year after year, amazing numbers. And just recently they put out a report that most of the larger economic organizations that weigh into this are slowing down a little bit on what they think and are moving off of a 5 to 7% appreciation for 24 and thinking we're going to end closer to something like 3, maybe under 5, but 3 to 4%. So that sort of shifting. And then, the other thing we're starting to talk about, we're in the second half of 2024, and are we starting to see some relief? I know, again, agents I'm talking to are almost surprised about the calls that they're getting right now from clients who in July are saying, we're thinking about putting our house on the market.
Right.
Really, is it a late spring market, or is it really a surge of, suddenly sellers changing their mind and realizing maybe now is the time to get into the market? So lots going on, lots of things, again, that we're starting to see. Some of the data's telling it, but I think a lot of kind of what we're feeling right now, right?
That's right. So the inventory piece, right? We're seeing that in the news as well, where inventory is creeping up in a lot of markets and days on market. And there was also a stat out there about the number of price changes that are taking place in specific markets. So that's an indicator, like you're saying, that appreciation is slowing. It doesn't necessarily mean that that the market is crashing. Please don't take it that way. It just means that appreciation is slowing back towards a more sustainable rate versus that 5 to 7%, which really created that affordability issue where people couldn't keep up, incomes weren't keeping up with the price of housing.
Yeah.
So an interesting stat about inventory that's here is we had 17 months of decline in inventory, and now May marked, and again, this is data, so it's lagging, but the data from May shows that it was the 7th straight month of increasing listing activity. Yeah. And again, that's across every market. That's across the U.S. market. So your market obviously has more specific data. So be aware of that and look into it. But you talk about how sellers may be coming out now when it wasn't expected. And I think that has a lot to do, and you and I have talked about it, with life changes, right? You can't stop life.
Yeah.
And all of the Ds that we've talked about in the past, the 5 Ds.
I think there's 6, but
6.
Don't test me now. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, that's why I'm not trying to say them. We said them in the past. But with that, people can't stop life. So at a certain point, they have to move, and the realization that interest rates aren't going to go below 5, below 4, certainly, maybe in our lifetime again. So for that, sellers are coming out. They realize they have to make a change, and so it's a unique time to harness the opportunity and the shift in the market.
Yeah. And so, I think what we were kind of talking about earlier is, so what do agents do with this, right?
Right.
And if you're hearing some of these stats and you aren't that super aware of any of these, I think step number one is making sure where are you reading your information?
Yes.
Because the other thing that I think is so compelling is that these are all major national headlines. And whether or not any of these things hold true in your own local market, you need to know the difference because all the consumers at your, the 4th of July picnic you just went to, right? Whatever summer plans you have, whoever you interact with, these are the things that they're reading. And so you need to know how to react and really kind of educate your clients right now. I think that's such a big piece of creating your value and differentiating yourself.
That's right. And reflect on what you know. We talked about data as that lagging indicator, but what do you know? What are you working with right now? And craft those stories. Think back over the last month, 2 months, quarter, about what experience that you've had with inventory and the stories with sellers selling and buyers buying so that you can relate that and put the data in perspective for your clients.
Yeah. And I think the water cooler is so important. Like, what are you talking to other colleagues, other agents
Right.
about right now? Because all of you make up this momentum or this shift or the dynamics of what's happening in the market. So it's important to read, it's important to look at the numbers, look at your MLS, but talk to your colleagues. Absolutely. Because, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 anecdotal stories that all sound the same suddenly become a theme that tend to become a trend, right? So making sure that you're doing that. And then the other thing I think right now, if it were me, is, and I've again talked with a lot of agents about this, where they had clients at the beginning of 2024 that were like, we're sitting put, we're not doing anything. And now all of a sudden mid-year, there's a lot going on. We're not going to go into it all, but obviously we've got, an election coming up and a lot of action going on and a lot of conversation going on there. Things with the economy, inventory, rates, all of this conversation, all of these things are maybe impacting a change or a different outlook for clients. So if whatever conversation you may have had in January, their mind may have shifted. There might have been something that has made them start looking at, maybe now is a better time than I think. And what I'm seeing is a lot of agents are having clients that are suddenly re-engaging them in the middle of this year.
Right.
So what I am encouraging you to do, though, is you won't always get the luxury that they're just going to reach out to you,
Yes.
right? So I think as an agent, you want to make sure that go down your list, start reaching out to people that maybe you talked to at the beginning of the year and just re-engage them and say, hey, has anything changed? Again, we're looking at a really great opportunity if now does feel like the right time for you to do something. So
Right.
I think being proactive instead of reactive in a market right now where, we're looking for inventory, the market numbers are down. So you have to kind of really push and force to get those opportunities.
Yeah, don't miss the opportunity, right? Based on the conversation you had in January.
Right.
Make sure that they're not going out to open houses or they're not searching on their own, or if they are, about it.
Yeah.
Be in contact with them.
Yeah, be in the know.
That's right. So those are the 2 things you can do to make sure you take advantage of the shift. Thank you for joining us today. As always, hit the like button. Let us know in the comments what you're doing and how you're preparing to be able to communicate what's happening in the market with your clients. And until we see you next week, remember,
You got this.
You got
He was going to steal my line.
that's right. I almost did. I did.
Make it a good one. We'll see you soon.